Sister asked, "Are we really that bad?" And I realized nothing I said would hurt them like honesty. We were in my car, parked outside our parents' house with the engine off, the windows fogging slightly from our breath. The porch light was still on, throwing this pale yellow cone over the driveway where we'd just survived another family dinner. My hands were wrapped around the steering wheel, more for stability than anything, and she was turned toward me in the passenger seat, seatbelt still on like she might bolt at any second. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingers. Her eyeliner had smudged from crying in the kitchen 20 minutes earlier, but she'd wiped the streaks away on the sleeve of her cardigan before we walked out the front door, like she always does. It was a Sunday night. I'm 31F, she's 28F, and we have two parents in their late 50s who swear they did their best. So often I hear it in my head like a jingle. Tonight's fight had started over something stupid, me saying I wouldn't come over every week anymore. But like always, it slid effortlessly into greatest hits of how ungrateful I am. Dad's voice had that hard, bright edge as he listed school fees and rent help from a decade ago. Mum cried into a tea towel about losing her daughter. My sister, Emma, tried to play peacemaker and ended up caught in the crossfire, like she has our entire lives. "Say something," she said now, fingers plucking at the hem of her dress. "Are we really that bad? You make it sound like we're some toxic family from a movie. We're not that bad, right?" I opened my mouth and nothing came out. In my head, I saw two versions of my answer. One where I lied, like I've done since we were kids. I'd say, "Of course not, I'm just sensitive." And the air would slowly re-solidify around her, and she'd be able to go back inside later telling herself I just exaggerate. The other was the truth. Yes, sometimes you are that bad. Not every second, not in every way. But yes, to explain how we got to that parked car, I kinda have to rewind. Growing up, if you'd asked anyone who knew us, they would have said my family was close. We did Christmas big, matching pajamas and everything. We went to every school concert. Mum packed our lunches and wrote little notes sometimes. Smiley faces, "Good luck on your test." I don't want to paint it like it was all darkness and horror. That's part of what made it so confusing. There were good moments. There were also other moments. I was the eldest, the clever one, the one Mum bragged about at work. "My eldest is so smart, top of her class," she'd say. It sounds like a compliment until you realize it came with an unspoken job description. Don't mess up. Don't be difficult. Take care of your sister. Don't make us look bad. Emma was the sensitive one, which in our house meant constantly being told, "Stop crying, you're fine," while her little heart fell out of her chest. She'd cry when Mum and Dad fought, cry when Dad made one of his jokes. That was really just an insult in a funny voice. Mum would pull this irritated face and say, "You're just like your sister, everything's drama." There wasn't one big, cinematic moment where I realized, oh, this is messed up. It was more like background radiation. Dad coming home from work in a bad mood and slamming cupboards while we all went quiet. Mum sighing deeply if I asked for help with homework, then telling anyone who would listen how she never got a second to herself. Me getting a 92 on a test and Dad saying, "What happened to the other 8%?" in front of everyone. If I cried or said, "That hurt my feelings," the response was, "We were just joking. You're too sensitive." If I got angry, I was ungrateful and disrespectful. If I was quiet, I was sulking. There was no right way to be. Emma learned to crack jokes to defuse things. I learned to leave the room. We both learned to preempt our parents' moods like we were reading the weather. I didn't think of any of that as abuse or trauma or whatever. It was just my family. You don't question water when you're born in it. You just learn to hold your breath. Things only started to shift when I moved out at 23 and suddenly didn't have their voices in my ears 24/7. My anxiety, which I'd always thought of as just being a worrier, got louder without all the chores and drama to distract me. I'd be sitting on my couch in the quiet, phone face down on the coffee table, and my stomach would twist just because my mum's name flashed on the screen. It all came to a head after one particular Sunday dinner a couple years ago. I'd had a rough week at work. My boss had yelled at me in front of everyone, and all I wanted was a quiet evening. Mom called, chipper urgent, "See you at 6." And I said, "Actually, I'm exhausted. I think I'm going to skip tonight." Cue meltdown. "We never see you anymore. You only come when it suits you. When you were growing up, we never got a break." I went anyway because guilt is a stronger fuel than petrol. The whole night was tense. At one point, Dad started in on my job, saying I should be further along by now. I said, "I'm doing my best." And he scoffed, "Your best isn't much." And everyone chuckled like it was just banter. I went to the bathroom and had what I now know was a panic attack, sitting on the closed toilet lid trying to breathe while my vision went weird. On the drive home, my boyfriend, now ex, said, "You know the way they talk to you isn't normal, right?" I shrugged, defensive. "They're just like that," I said. "Like what?" he asked. Took me way too long to answer. Fast forward, I end up in therapy. My therapist, Rachel, asks me about my childhood, and I do my usual dance, talking about how hard my parents worked, how we all turned out fine, making jokes to undercut anything that sounds too serious. She listens and then says, "Where do you go in all this?" I hear a lot about what they needed and felt. "I'm not hearing much about you." I laugh it off at first, but she keeps gently nudging. We talk about anxiety, boundaries, the concept that you're allowed to say no without giving a 12-step presentation. Radical stuff, apparently. One day, after I described yet another fight where Mum accused me of abandoning her because I didn't answer the phone while I was in a work meeting, Rachel says, "It sounds like you have to manage your parents' emotions more than your own." I joke, "Parenting my parents, yeah." And she just looks at me, not laughing. That's when the internal narrative starts to shift. Not in a dramatic "my parents are evil" way, but in a quiet, unsettling "this wasn't okay" way. The more I learn language like emotional responsibility and enmeshment, the more old memories rearrange themselves. The time Mum told me at 14 about Dad's almost affair and made me promise not to tell anyone. The time Dad made fun of my weight in front of my friends and then got angry when I didn't want to come out of my room. The way every argument somehow ended with me apologizing for causing stress because I cried. The thing is, Emma didn't come to therapy with me. She was still in the house until last year, still very much in the role of peacekeeper. She'd call me after fights with them, tired and upset, but as soon as I said anything like, "That's not fair of them," she'd go, "Yeah, but they've been through so much, you know?" So while I was slowly rewiring my brain around this stuff, she was still living in the old script. All of that was swirling in the background when tonight's dinner happened. I texted the family earlier in the week. "Hey, heads up, I'm gonna start coming over less. Maybe once a month instead of every week. I've got a lot on and I need some downtime." I hovered for 10 minutes before hitting send. My heart did that weird stutter afterwards, like it dropped down an elevator shaft. Mum replied almost instantly, "Oh, didn't realize we were such a burden. Don't worry, you won't have to see us at all if it's that hard." Dad sent, "Typical." Emma privately messaged, "They're being dramatic. But maybe come this Sunday and we can talk about it." So I went. Sitting at that table tonight, fork in hand, I knew it was going to blow. You can feel a storm in the air. Mum opened with, "So you're too busy for your own family now?" In that folite voice that's anything but. "I never said that," I replied. "I just said I need more time for myself. Once a month isn't never." Dad launched into his favorite speech about how when he was my age, he worked 6 days a week, looked after his own parents, raised 2 kids, never complained. "This generation is so soft," he said, carving the roast like it had personally offended him. I could feel myself shrinking the way I always do when Emma spoke up. "She's allowed to be tired," she said quietly. "You guys are a lot sometimes." Everyone at the table froze for half a second, like someone had dropped a glass. I don't think I've ever heard her say that to them before. Mum's eyes went wide. "We're a lot," she repeated. "Excuse me?" Emma flushed. "I just mean you can be demanding, with calls and expectations." Dad laughed, that sharp bark. "Ungrateful, both of you," he said. We bend over backwards, and all we hear is how exhausting we are. I tried to stay reasonable. I'm not saying you're bad people, I said. I'm saying I need some space so I don't feel like I'm drowning. Mum started crying, of course. I must have been a terrible mother, she sniffed. All I wanted was a close family. This is the part where I usually backpedal. You weren't terrible. I'm just stressed. I'm sorry. But something in me was too tired tonight. Maybe because I'd spent therapy last week making a list of all the times I'd swallowed my feelings to protect hers. Maybe because Emma had actually stuck her neck out for once too. I took a breath. You were sometimes hurtful, I said, hands shaking under the table. You still are when you guilt-trip me for having my own life. The table went nuclear. Dad slammed his fork down. There it is, he said. The therapist's talk. Hurtful. Toxic. Boundaries. You kids have no idea how lucky you are. Mum cried harder. Emma looked like she wanted to slide under the table. The rest is a blur of lines I've heard 100 times. We did our best. You had food and clothes and holidays. You're rewriting history. Other people had it worse. At one point, Dad said, "We're not that bad." And I laughed, this ugly little sound, because he genuinely believes that not beating us puts him above criticism. Eventually, I stood up and said, "I'm going to go." And Emma followed me out, pausing only long enough to pat Mum's shoulder, which brings us back to the car. Her question hanging in the fogged-up air. Are we really that bad? I looked at her, really looked. Same brown eyes as mine, but hers are always searching, scanning faces for cues. She still lives 15 minutes away from them. They drop in unannounced. They jokingly ask when she's giving them grandkids every time she mentions going on a date. She still calls me whispering from her bedroom sometimes after a fight, saying, "Maybe if I just stop bringing up my feelings, it'll be easier." I thought about all the times she's defended them to me. Mum had it rough, she'd say. Dad's old school. They don't know any better. I said now, choosing my words like defusing a bomb. Do you want me to make you feel better or do you want the truth? She hesitated, then laughed a bit watery. Can I choose both? I sighed. I don't know if both exists here. She chewed on her lip. Okay, she said. Truth. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Because once I said it, I knew I couldn't unsay it. Sometimes, I said, yes, they really are that bad. She recoiled like I'd slapped her, then blinked. You don't mean that, she said automatically. I do, I said softer. Not every moment, not everything, but the way they treat us. The constant guilt, the yelling, the way they make our feelings about them, that's bad. If you told me your boyfriend talked to you like that, I'd be dragging you out of that relationship. She stared ahead through the fogged windshield. There are parents, she said. I know, I said. That's what makes it so hard. We sat in silence for a minute. I could see her jaw working, grinding through years of script. I thought you were just dramatic, she admitted finally. With therapy and all, like you were making it bigger than it is. But tonight, when Dad said you're drowning and they've done so much for you, like that cancels everything out, that felt wrong. And then he turned on me too. He always did, I said quietly. You just always jumped back to their side so fast you didn't notice. That's not fair, she shot back, defensive. Maybe not, I said. But it's true. You've always been their translator. She didn't mean it. He's just tired. It's not that deep. You smooth everything out. That's my job, she said, then caught herself. I mean, I just want everyone to get along. That's not supposed to be your job, I said. You're their kid, not their mediator. She went quiet again. I watched her fiddle with the fraying edge of the seat cover. My chest ached. I didn't want to hurt her. I also didn't want to lie. Do you hate them? She asked suddenly. The question winded me. No, I said instantly, and that was the truth. I love them. That's the messed up part. I love them, and being around them makes me feel like I'm 14 and about to be grounded for breathing wrong. She almost smiled at that because she remembers the year I got grounded for talking back when I said, "I'm not hungry," and Dad took it as an attack on Mum's cooking. "So what now?" she whispered. "You just come once a month and pretend everything's fine?" "I don't think I can pretend anymore," I said. "That was sort of the point of tonight. I'd rather be honest and see what survives. And if nothing survives, then at least I'm not betraying myself," I said. "I've been doing that for 3 decades." She leaned her head back against the seat, eyes closed. "I don't know how to do that," she said. "Not betray myself. I wouldn't even know where to start." I thought of Rachel, of all the sessions I'd spent saying, "I don't want to make things a big deal," and her gently saying, "Your feelings are already a big deal to you. Naming them doesn't create them. You start small," I said. "Like, next time Mum says, 'We're such terrible parents,' instead of rushing to reassure her, you say, 'It hurt when you yelled at me,' and you don't immediately backtrack." She scoffed. "She'd lose it." "Probably," I said. "She loses it anyway. At least then you're not losing yourself in the process." She was quiet for a long time. I let her be. One thing therapy has taught me is that you can't drag people into your healing pace. They'll just dig their heels in. Finally she said, very softly, "I don't want them to be bad." My throat tightened. "Me neither," I said. "I've spent years trying to edit them in my head into parents who did small, forgivable things instead of patterns that shaped everything. But wanting them to be different doesn't make it so." She opened her eyes and looked at me. "Do you think they'll ever get it?" she asked. "Like, actually understand?" I pictured Dad tonight, red-faced, calling me ungrateful. Mum clutching her chest like my boundary was a dagger. I pictured them reading a book about boundaries and saying, "This is American rubbish." "Honestly," I said, "probably not in the way we want. I think they're too invested in the story where they're the heroes who sacrificed everything." "So what's the point?" She sounded frustrated. "If they'll never understand, why keep poking it?" "Because I need to understand," I said. "For me. So I can stop passing this shit on to whoever comes after us, if I ever have kids. So that when my partner says, 'Hey, that comment hurt,' my first reaction isn't, 'Well, you're too sensitive.'" She huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I already do that," she said. "My ex told me once I was minimizing his emotions, and I said, 'You think that's minimizing?' Like some trauma competition." "We learned from the best," I said. We both smiled, a little broken, a little knowing. "Are you going to go no contact?" she asked after a moment. The fact that she even knows that term now tells me she's been Googling more than she admits. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Right now I'm trying low contact. Less time, more boundaries. If they keep trampling them, I might." "That would kill Mum," she whispered. I shrugged. "Them being how they are has been killing me slowly. At some point I have to pick whose life I'm protecting." She winced, and I regretted the harshness, but I didn't take it back. We sat there until the windows fully fogged over and my stomach started growling because I hadn't eaten much at dinner, too busy trying not to cry. Eventually, Emma unbuckled her seatbelt. "I need to go home," she said. "They'll text if I don't." "You can come to mine," I offered, even though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. "Not tonight. I don't know, time to think." She reached for the door handle, then paused. "Thanks for not lying," she said without looking at me. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It hurt." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "Everything about this hurts," she said. "At least now I know which part is real." After she left, I just sat there for a while, forehead on the steering wheel, breathing in the damp car smell. Part of me wanted to drive straight back, bang on the front door, and tell my parents everything I've ever thought. That I still flinch when someone raises their voice, that I hear ungrateful in my head whenever I buy myself something nice, that I spent half my 20s apologizing for existing. But I didn't, because I've learned that my honesty is not a scalpel to fix them with. It's a tool to carve out a life that doesn't revolve around their comfort. So yeah, sister asked, are we really that bad? And in that moment I realized nothing I said would hurt them like honesty. Not because honesty is cruel, but because it shatters the story they've been living in. The one where they're just strict, we're just sensitive, and everything was fine. The truth is, my family is a mix of love and harm, of Sunday roasts and slammed doors, of we're proud of you, and you're never enough. And pretending it's anything else has been slowly killing me. I don't know yet if Emma will follow me into this messy, uncomfortable honesty. I don't know if my parents will ever do anything other than double down. But I do know this. Next time someone in that house asks me, are we really that bad? I'm done rewriting history to protect them from the answer.